Thank you.
So, hello again, everyone. They were so desperate to find a moderator, they asked me to come back again. I am delighted to be back with you, and we have an outstanding group of 4 individuals to tackle the subject that we are going to cover in this next discussion, and that is jobs, human capital, making the most of the talent that is given to each and every individual, no matter who they are, no matter what their challenge, and what cities and what local governments can do to maximize talent. So let's introduce them, and I will begin with first Mayor Omar Mani of Amman, Jordan. To my right, he was appointed to that position in 2006 after 25 years in the private sector as a founder and chairman of the Mani Group, a manufacturing firm. He has been involved over the years in a number of private and public efforts in the direction of reform and civic efforts across the board. So we will be hearing from Mayor Mani. Second, and to his right, Mayor Richard M. Daley of the great city of Chicago, since he was first elected in the year 1989. There is a magazine with a name of another city in this country that recently called him America's greatest mayor. And if I may just make a brief personal comment, my husband and I first got to know Mayor Daley and his wife Maggie, who, as we mentioned, is sitting on the front row here, through the disability community. This city of Chicago is famous for its coalitions, and I think that partly explains it. And I would venture to say the disability community here in Chicago would be among the first to agree that he is America's greatest mayor.
There you go.
Thank you.
And to his right, wearing the red vest, you can't miss him, is Mayor Claudio Orrego UsA of Chile, Peñalolén, Chile, one of the largest municipalities in Santiago. At a relatively young age, he has already had a long and distinguished career in the public and the private sectors. He served in various local and national government positions before becoming a top official with Chile's largest software and IT service provider. And finally, to my far right, to your left, is Anne Eleanor Roosevelt, Vice President, Global Corporate Citizenship for the Boeing Company. Anne has had a long career in public service, having worked in education, in museums, here in Chicago in the mayor's office, and in philanthropy, where she serves on a number of nonprofit boards. Some of them in her capacity, as you might imagine, as a granddaughter of President Franklin Roosevelt. So please join me in welcoming these 4 wonderful panelists. So let's get right to this to the subject, and I'm going to start with you, Mayor Lorraine. I'll start with you because of the vest. Help us understand the nature of the scope and the challenge of finding jobs, finding work, maximizing human talent in the cities and towns and municipalities around the globe.
Well, first of all, let me explain the best. I do not work in Walmart. This is the daily jacket we use, every public official in Peñalolén, and it's a visible sign of the passion and the feet on the mud approach we have for governing. So that's why we always wear it for these public events. Going directly to the subject, we have a there's a universal saying, do not give away fish, teach how to fish. And I think in terms of economic travel, the most important thing we can do as mayors, we cannot create jobs. It's the private sector that creates the jobs. But we can help the people to find those jobs. And that's what we're doing in Peñalolén, but also I think many cities surrounded here in this forum. We need to train them. We need to give them the 21st century skills, be it technological, be it specific training for specific jobs that are needed in the new economy. And I think a mayor that thinks he can do it alone is just a blind mayor. We need alliances. We need to cope with the private sector to see what is it that they need so we can help them train the people in our communities. In Peñalolén, we created what we call the Muhammad Yunus Center for Employment, Training, and Microentrepreneurship. What we do is we train people, and we say we cannot offer you a job, but if you're willing to go out of poverty, Peñalolén is a very poor community, we're willing to give you the training, be it, technological training. We're willing to have agreements with the private sector. We have 80 companies to which we train people, and they will hire them. And that's a way that we can bridge this gap. It's not by trying to make government just an enterprise to create new jobs, but rather to foster the relationship between the community and the private sector and train the people. I would say if I were to do one thing as a mayor to help people get jobs, will be train, train, and train.
Mayor Daley,
I think
from your perspective, what's the challenge?
Well, I think each mayor has to assess their community. And we're here in Chicago. We're really fortunate. We have an immigrant community even today. We have been built by immigrants, our past, our present, and the future. And this school, University of Illinois, represents the second or third generation of immigrant families arriving in Chicago. Then we have a whole new group of younger people coming in from universities, graduate students, undergraduate students. They're moving to Chicago. And so you have to assess that. At the same time, in this whole deep recession we have, I believe it's a restructuring of America. The things that we accepted, the old playbook does not work. So what you have to bring the business community and the educators together. And you have to say, what can we do better? Both in our elementary schools, we have to create career techs and technology, high schools. We have to have those after-school programs that Maggie founded that really interest and give the curiosity of younger people from poorer communities about some interest in math and science, some new jobs they've never heard about. And so then in turn, you have to create I really believe, a training facility for those who have been laid off. And what we've done is in Chicago called the Career Tech. It's people who have been working between 40,000 and 125,000. They don't have the technology skills. So they're going to get paid. They're going to work 6 days a week. They'll do training 2 days a week, 2 days a week in mentoring, and 2 days a week in community service. When they complete their training, they're going to get a job. Because you have to train for the future, and it deals with technology. Of all the things that I've seen as mayor, this is all about technology. Whether you're running manufacturing, the operation here, any place you go, it's all about technology. And what we have to do is reinvent our schools, maybe virtual schools, technology schools, because children are going to learn differently from the past. And training, you have to get the business community. People are tired of being trained for they don't get a job. So you really have to have the business community sitting there. And when they sit there, we can train according to what they need today and in the future.
Mayor Mani, you come out of the private sector. You come out of the business community. As somebody who knows that world, because you've spent so long in it, and now you're in the public sector, how do you see this challenge, this job challenge? What's the proper role of government and the private sector?
Absolutely. Jordan is a unique case here because 75% of the population of 6 million are under the age of 25 years old. So it's a very youthful population. Let me give you quickly some statistics. We have 1 million out of the 6 million going to regular schooling, and about 400,000 going to universities, vocational training centers, technical colleges, and what have you, higher education. So we have a lot of education is very, very important for Jordan. Illiteracy is extremely low. It's hardly 2 or 3%. So it's a very literate state. The problem is the outcome of those universities and vocational trainings and even schooling, regular schooling, does not seem to marry itself very well with market needs. We have a lot of engineers. We have an abundance of 150,000 engineers. We have tens of thousands of doctors. Now, if they go, we'll be very happy to export some of those engineers to Chicago. And Mayor Daley has voiced his approval on this. The issue, the main challenge we have is that what is needed in order to fortify their skills, their tool of skills, are softer skills that are not available, and they are not taught through either the curriculum, and seemingly the university teachers do not have command of those capabilities.
What kind of skills did you say?
Softer skills. Let me
What's
identify.
an example?
They are communication skills, they are building sense of citizenship, they are teamwork, they are even public speaking skills, of which this mayor has had a lot of training. I hope sometimes it shows. So what the city is doing in order, because those sets of skills are very needed in the marketplace nowadays, on top of the technical skills which are in abundance in Amman and Jordan. What the municipality and also the Ministry of Education is doing in Jordan is to introduce those at the county level and in different districts of the city, whereby we have many training programs, training of trainers first, and then training on those sets of skills that are so badly needed. We've also built up something like 50 community and IT centers sprawled around the capital. And in those IT centers, we teach a lot of the different disciplines that come with using technology and the
When you say we, you mean the city?
The city, the municipality. I'm talking about the municipality. In Amman, the capital, or historically, the municipalities are not responsible for education, unlike what happens here in Chicago and some chartered cities in the United States. But we are leaning against a new constitution now in Jordan, which gives more possibilities for the city to intervene, although maybe not necessarily in the core of education, but to complete the circle so that the future generations are more equipped for the future needs.
And Roosevelt, from the perspective of someone who's worked, as I said, private sector, public sector, and knows the nonprofit sector, what role, how do you see this crisis, this jobs dilemma facing all of us, and the role of the nonprofit sector in moving it forward?
Well, I think if you look at probably any of our cities, but I certainly know here in Chicago, the key to solving this problem is the collaboration that is fostered by the mayor, by the city, and he's worked very hard over 20 years, and I know because I work for him doing this, right, to bring the nonprofit sector and the private sector to all sit around the table and to talk about, to first listen to what is the need, and then to analyze where the resources are that will solve the problem. So I think that's that's the key, is the ability for all the sectors to sit at the table and talk together about how to craft the solution going forward. But I want to emphasize one point that the mayor made about the soft skills, because we can talk profitably and long about training for jobs that need to be done, and certainly my company has a specific interest in certain kinds of jobs that we envision we are going to need as our workforce retires. But our company focuses like a laser on the soft skills starting at 0 to 5. That early education is so important to being able to develop that scientist, that engineer, who can also work with people, who can also make things happen because they understand how people work. And so that, I think, is something that cities can also do, is to remember that learning is not just about facts and data. It is the ability to bring it all together that is going to make for a successful workforce and a successful climate of innovation that's going to create the jobs for that workforce.
You've all touched on education. Certainly, Mayor Daley, you touched on education and some of the work you've done in that area. I want to come back to that because as I think was mentioned a moment ago by Mayor Mani, the education sector is so often controlled by different levers of power than the central government in a city. How do you get those two to work together to think about the future, to think about jobs that are going to be needed a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades from now? How do you make that come together?
Well, I would say that public education is difficult anywhere in the world. We all suffer from centralized regulations that do not allow sometimes mayors to do the correct job at the local level. However, I think quoting Mr. Burnham from Chicago, have no little plans, that we have to aim for the best. When I started being mayor 5 years ago, we had the worst grades in the country, in Peñalolén. And we say we want to be the best, going from the worst to the best. And we cannot do this alone. So what we did is we invited both the private sector and universities. We have agreement with 16 different universities in the country to help us help schools. I mean, not only all of the educational sector, but specific schools. So we created, for example, advisory boards for every school, where we will call one businessman, one professor, and one high-level professional to be part of the board, and to help that principal to manage the school. Not only just to say how could they teach better, but how they manage the school. Just to have an idea, and this applies to most of developing countries, we have $70 per kid per month to have the best quality of education in the world. So you have to do miracles, and in order to do that, you need alliances. Second, we ask, I agree completely with Mayor Daley, we need to teach our kids not only to read, which is a basic skill, or math, but also to use computers. So we have made alliances with Microsoft, with Cisco, with Intel. So every kid in my community will get a degree, a certification in 8th grade and in 12th grade. 2 different certifications to be qualified on technology. And third, I think as important as those, we have asked also the private sector to help us in specific programs. I told Mrs. Daley yesterday that we copy a very good idea of Chicago, which is the After School Matter program. And we are just starting a national pilot in Chile, in my community. And of course, with $70 per kid per month, it's impossible to do. So we have been begging money around with companies. I just heard that Motorola is a good funder of Chicago. So Motorola, you're also in Chile, so you can maybe help us. We ask the national government, we ask community. And right. So I think if we tackle the national government, the community, business people, and introduce them to the real life of teaching in poor schools, public schools, I think we're doing the right job for the future. And I do really think that unless we have the biggest dreams for those kids, we will left them behind. And we cannot afford that.
Mayor Daley, pick up on that, because it's every country is different, every city is different in many respects. How do you see it from here?
Well, I think, like anything else, it is a challenge dealing with education. But we have to remember all of our parents. Our parents have given us values, instilled in us from them and their religious beliefs. And secondly, they all gave us education. That's why we're here. Look at the audience, look at the dais here. We're all here because we're educated. We some way have to make priorities in government. The highest priority of the federal, state, and local government should be one issue, should be education. That is a great equalizer. That changes your country, your city, and the world more than anything else. But then you have to look at your budget. If you spend more money in war, if you spend more money in policing and more money in everything, then you have different priorities. And everybody has to look at efficiency. Everybody has to be creative. And that's what the Board of Education has done. It's the most difficult challenge I've had, but it's the most rewarding challenge. We have to highlight, we have great teachers. We have to highlight teachers. We have to highlight students who come from difficult backgrounds that are success stories. If I looked over this audience, there are people who graduated from public schools. There are people who had a lot of difficulties in their life. And we have to reinforce that of another generation. I believe this generation will be better, and we have to have confidence in them. And we have to look at teaching differently. We have to look at maybe more mentors, more instructors. We have to look at the classroom differently. As we all grew up in classrooms, it is changing because of technology, and technology is the answer. Math and science in this country, in the hemisphere, this whole hemisphere, we lack math and science. We lack math and science degrees as well as educators. And that's why you have to go overseas and bring math and science, because you cannot grow them out of your universities in the next 20 years. Everybody knows that. And so you have to allow immigration to bring in the best and the brightest. Right after the Second World War, we brought the best and the brightest out of Russia and Germany here in America. We have to rethink where America is going to be. And to me, it requires the highest priority in these foundations, the MacArthur Community Trust, the Boeing Foundation, the Joyce. They bring business and they bring the public officials together in the non-for-profit and said, let's get an agenda, let's move forward. Because the education is the key to any success of any community.
Mayor Monty, that's something that so many, or if not everyone, can agree with. But in a time of limited resources, how do you pay for education? I mean, how do you make sure that your children, who are going to be the adults of 20 years from now, are in a position to fill those jobs that are going to need to be filled and need smart people to do them?
Yeah, I find that generally work at the municipal level is much more effective in change management, and because municipalities are leaner, they are more flexible, they are more efficient, they are quick in response, quick to motivate, and quick to make decisions. I'll shed light on some of the examples. Our curriculum for between grade 1 and 12 has not been changed now for decades. There have been some cosmetic changes, but nothing of serious. A lot of the public schools, especially outside the capital, are rehabilitated. They are run down. They are in miserable conditions. And obviously, this is not where you want to send your children if they are to have the sense of hope and belonging, and to build a sense of citizenship. Our teachers, again, especially in the very important primary stage, are not well trained at all, and it would be very easy to have some extremists influence their minds and therefore pollute the minds of our children. Let me shed light very quickly on two attempts from outside the central government to repair some of the damage and help out. One initiative called Madrasati in Arabic, which in English means my school, was initiated by Her Majesty our Queen Rania, and she initiated a foundation to help out. So they first worked on the physical premises to improve the physical premises in all public schools in Jordan. It's an ongoing program. The second was to do further the training of the teachers and to work on the teachers and his different competencies that are badly needed. And lately, I understand they're beginning to work on the curriculum. Help out work, because obviously it's the central government's role. Now, I find those initiatives outside the body of the central governments sometimes are very, very effective. It's funded. This initiative is funded from private sector donations, and because eventually the private sector, in order to flourish, they need good output from teaching. On a completely different front, what the municipality and I have personally done over the last 15 years, I'm engaged in a group called Injaz, where we develop a mentorship program, and we have had this mentorship program reach about 150,000 students aged in early adulthood, from 13 to 17, I believe. And what we want to bestow or teach them or communicate with them is the sense of leadership, the sense of belonging, the sense of giving, the sense of teamwork. And I have found we monitor the progress of those students. These programs, if well developed and well communicated, can have massive massive benefits for the children as they develop. So in conclusion, I have to tell you that my perception of the reform in education must not be left to the central governments. They simply will not do it.
Ann Roosevelt, how do you find that strike that balance? But who's got the best ideas? Obviously, everybody has some good ideas. But how do you strike the right balance? Government, the education establishment, the private sector, and so on.
Well, I think we've found that that balance is a tenuous thing, that you have to work at it all the time. But it starts with talking to one another and listening to one another and understanding what each party brings to the table. The mayor was talking about NJAS, and we are a supporter of NJAS in Jordan and in the Middle East. And so you see that virtuous circle even in his example, that the private sector supports a nonprofit partner who delivers the services that then works its way into the school system that is publicly supported through the priorities that government has set. That's how you pay for it, is you decide what you're going to pay for. And so it all works together. If you are all talking together, it works, and you find that balance. You find the result that you want. What you have to look at is, what are the results? So when choosing partners, who is the best partner? Well, who has proven themselves, who has shown that they can deliver outcomes, and then you continue that partnership and develop it.
One of the challenges we face in this country, and I know this is the case in many other places, is the jobs that many people have been trained for and have done as adults. Many of those changed, disappeared, in some cases altogether. So you end up with real dislocation of skill and need. Mayor Daley, how should we think about that? I mean, this is something that our country is grappling with, struggling with right now.
Well, I think our country really lacks the skills in math and science, and of course in technology. And so what we have to do is rethink of our schools and bring technology into the classrooms, technology into the homes, and technology into your libraries, is to make education the highest priority in the relocation of people. It's very difficult if you're working for $25, $30 an hour. Then all of a sudden you're retrained and you're going to earn $14 or $15 an hour. In some way, we have to be able to retrain people into specific jobs, especially in manufacturing. I think manufacturing with technology can compete in the world. We have a steel company here on the south side. We'll compete with the world. It's a unionized workforce. It's all about technology. It's all about the environment. And they will compete in this global world dealing with steel. You never expected that. Again, we have to be able to work with the businesses and work with non-for-profits in regards to training people at an earlier time before the company closes down. We get it at the end result. The company announces they're closing down, they're going to move, whatever it is, they're going bankrupt, that's the end. We should be able to assess that prior, your workforce development force, to look at all these jobs and assess them prior to it so we can train them now. You can't wait until the end result happens and they're out of a job. And that's what usually happens in workforce development. But also evaluate, look for accountability in the workforce development. It's very difficult. You have to find out, don't be training people to train people, never get a job. And I think that is a great frustration with many people. You've trained me, I've been in all these training programs. Where is the job? Because there's a disconnect between those who are training and the business community.
Is part of what you're saying simply a matter of the private sector not letting the public sector know what's coming?
Well, that's part of it, too. That's why you have to have this ongoing relationship with the business community. You cannot separate them in a political way. You cannot separate them because you don't believe that the private sector is the best interest of your city. You have to bring them to the table, and they will be at the table. They will participate with you. because they need the workforce. They need the employees to be basically challenged and better educated and compete in a global market. And we are competing in a global market today.
Mayor Larraín, how do you see it from your perspective in Chile?
I was thinking that, I mean, I agree with Mayor Daley in the sense that maybe the private sector sometimes does not talk too much to the educational system and to the public sector. But to be quite honest, at least in the case of Chile, I do not want to generalize. Sometimes we in the public sector, and especially in the educational system, we are self-centered too much. So we have been teaching the same stuff for the last 10 to 20 years without looking and even searching for these common ground tables to see what's going on out in the world.
Did you say too self-centered?
Self-centered, yes,
Yeah.
that's what I meant. And so I think, for example, in the case of Chile, we need more technical people. We need to foster technical education. And when you go to a school, I can speak for myself, but this can apply to anyone in the country and maybe in Latin America, you see that the teachers are not connected with the market. So they're, for example, if you're teaching someone mechanics, they're using a car that is like 20 years old, or electricity, or computing. So that's what when you need this alliance to talk and to understand what's going on, not only today, but the next 10 to 20 years. And that gives me to another point, and I agree with the mayor of Amman, is that the technology is going to change very fast. And that's something we know for sure. Change is permanent in this society. So therefore, instead of just focusing on teaching one specific subject, as important as it can be, I think we ought to teach people to learn permanently. And that gets to values. I mean, what you look as an employer in the market. Be it in the school, in the after-school program, or whatever, I think that's critical for economic development. There's one PowerPoint going around in the web that says, what explains the richness of a country? Is it the size? Is it the age? Is it the language they speak? Is it whether they have C or not C? No, at the end of the day, it's the attitude and the values of the people what explains how rich a country can be. And that's what we ought to see in the kids in the schools.
Ann Roosevelt, you were nodding.
Well, I am, because this is exactly what I think we were referring to before as soft skills in the end, but we try to train for that when they're adults. And I think one of the challenges for cities, for communities, is to start that training at that very early age where it becomes part of who they are. So they learn how to respect one another, how to be fair, how to share, how to listen. Those are the rudimentary skills in early education, in 0 to 5, that then can grow into communication skills and the ability to speak well, or other kinds of analytical skills that then you can apply the technology data to and have that powerful workforce.
Mayor Monti, I think one of the things we're getting at is education. Yes, it's about preparing for jobs, but it's also preparing for a rich life, for being a contributing citizen of a country, and being someone who enjoys reading. And there's more to education than just having a job. So how do you strike that?
I want to follow up on what Mrs. Roosevelt has been saying about rudimentary education at the very, very early stage, which is crucial. Obviously, now we know, psychologists tell us that it's so important in developing the character and all the values that come later. I have to be honest here and say that we, except for very privileged areas, especially in West Amman, this level of education is in shambles, unfortunately. And the problem is, however you try to repair the damage after that, the damage has been done. It's sometimes too late. This is, and there is now, again, through the initiatives of hopefully Madrasati, initiated by Her Majesty the Queen, there is now a serious look at this stage of education, so that it's not too late, Vanada. Let me remark something that is it just dawned onto me, actually, that I hear Mayor Daley always, since the 5 years I've known Mayor Daley, he has always been talking about the need in America for more engineers, more science, and there has to be more emphasis on science education at schooling. What is amazing, what strikes me and what struck me now is that the best universities in the world are in the United States, and I was privileged to do my graduate work here in the States. And what is confusing for me is that although you seem obviously on the international charts there in Europe, especially some countries in Western Europe, regular education from 1 to 12 is probably better than it is in the United States. But remember that the best universities in every field are in the United States. This is by the admission of everybody. So I'm trying to understand how this happens, how we can learn from this, so that in Jordan, the first stages of education, then the primary and secondary education, and eventually university education can be improved. On a final note here, there are now more private universities in Jordan than there are public. Unfortunately, a lot of those, or the majority, I can say, of those private universities took the quick way out. They went for the commercial end instead of developing endowments, developing foundations, looking at the core values of education. They went for the cheap buck, to be frank. Now, this is another thing that the government has to look at very, very seriously. It is to look at the quality of the curriculum they give, how relevant it is to the market needs, to look at the quality of the teachers, educators, outsource education. Now, we have DePaul University that Mayor Daley, myself are trying to keep in Amman and have them flourish in Amman and have more graduate programs. So we need this exchange program. We need more know-how from the United States to come into Amman and Jordan, so we can benefit from it.
You made a number of points I want to follow up, but the point you made, I think, just near the end about what happened in the United States. We have the greatest universities in the world, you were saying, but we still have this disconnect with not enough math and science. Mayor Daley and Roosevelt, how did that happen, and what can other countries learn from our experience?
Well, I think now what we're doing is the after-school program. Abbott and Motorola and others have invested dealing with the curiosity of younger people in math and science. To make it exciting, do a different curriculum from early childhood education with technology, to make it exciting and not people feel it's boring. Let's be realistic. Well, I'm not going to get a job. It's not equal to financial industry. It's not equal to the legal industry. I have no interest. We have to reinvent ourselves. If we don't, we've been talking about this for many years in this country, and you have to get the private sector. You have to look at the curriculum. Then you have to tell the families in America that in the past, every family received a good quality education. That was trusted by their mother or father, or their single mother, their grandfather, or a pastor in a church, or a leader in the community. Some way, education. We have to get back to that. We have a wonderful public library system. I can judge communities how well they attend and use a library system. We have technology in there. We have to put the responsibility not upon us and the business community, but also the families. And if not, we have to have mentors for those families. I think we cannot give up on anyone. Anyone that's born into a family, we cannot give up on them. We've been taught this way our life. Don't give up on a child born into a family that has difficult circumstances. Then we lose